In the early 1700s, Europe's mighty powers were once again at each other's throats. From 1716 to 1718, the Austrian Habsburgs clashed with the Ottoman Empire in what became known as the Austro-Turkish War. The struggle was brutal and short, with nearly 900,000 lives lost across the Balkans. Ultimately, Austria emerged victorious, seizing control of territories that included northern Bosnia, parts of Serbia, and the key city of Belgrade. As the empire expanded into this unfamiliar terrain, Austrian administrators and explorers were dispatched to catalog their new domains, mapping rivers, documenting local customs, and recording wildlife. But one administrator's journey through a quiet Serbian village would open the door to something far beyond cartography. In the summer of 1725, an imperial agent named Provisor Frombold arrived in the small village of Kisilova, located along the Danube River. While his mission was purely bureaucratic, what he stumbled upon would change the course of folklore and military documentation forever. While inspecting the town, Frombold noticed a large crowd gathered around the village cemetery. Curious, he made his way through the thickening mob. What he witnessed stunned him. Villagers had exhumed the body of a man recently buried. His name, Petar Blagojevic, a local man said to have died of illness at the age of 60, but the corpse looked anything but dead. The skin was vibrant, the hair and fingernails showed recent growth, and the body lacked signs of decay. Frombold watched in horror as a sharpened wooden stake carved from hawthorn was placed against the corpse's chest. Then, with a forceful blow, a mallet drove it through the man's heart. What followed was almost unimaginable. Fresh blood erupted from the corpse's chest, ears, and mouth. Some swore they heard the body let out a faint groan impossible for a lifeless form. The villagers then lowered the body back into the grave and set it ablaze. The smell of burning flesh hung in the air, and a heavy silence fell over the crowd. When Frombold asked his guide what he had just seen, the answer was chilling. A vampire, the man said. According to local testimony, Petar Blagojevic had not rested quietly in death. In the days following his burial, 9 villagers fell gravely ill, each dying within 24 hours. But what made their deaths truly unsettling were their final words. Each claimed that Petar himself, grotesque and transformed, had visited them in their dreams, strangling them and draining their life. To the villagers, these were not mere nightmares. These were attacks defying Austrian laws that prohibited body desecration. The townspeople acted, and when they unearthed Petar's body 10 weeks after his burial, the signs were clear. Undecomposed flesh, blood at the mouth, growing hair and nails. They did what their ancestors had done for generations, drove a stake through his heart and burned the remains. Frombold, disturbed yet diligent, submitted a full report to Vienna. That report, published later that summer, marked the first known written use of the word vampire in European history. And the empire took notice. 6 years later, a new crisis emerged. In the winter of 1731, reports of sudden and unexplained deaths reached Austrian officials from the village of Medvega in central Serbia. Worried that a deadly illness might be sweeping through the region, military leaders ordered a team of infectious disease experts to investigate. At the head of the group was Dr. Glaser, a stern, no-nonsense scientist unconvinced by peasant folklore, but what he found challenged every assumption. Upon arrival, Glaser found the death toll already in double digits. Victims had perished within days of falling ill, some in just 24 hours. None had shown any prior symptoms. To rule out plague, Glaser and his team exhumed several recent victims. What they found defied medical logic. The bodies showed no decomposition. Even weeks after death, their skin was smooth and pink, their limbs flexible, and in some cases, warm blood flowed from incisions. Most disturbing of all was the complete absence of signs of infection. No sores, rashes, or secretions, just death. The villagers, meanwhile, were adamant in their explanation. Vampires were to blame. They claimed the first victim, a man named Arnold Payol, had become infected after consuming soil from a vampire's grave and smearing himself in its blood, an old ritual meant to prevent possession. Instead, he had fallen from a wagon weeks later and died. But death did not stop him. Shortly after his burial, several villagers began reporting terrifying visions of Arnold dread-eyed and smiling cruelly from the corners of their dreams. 4 of those dreamers died days later. Upon exhuming Arnold's body, villagers found him eerily intact. His lips were blooded, his face flushed, and a stake driven through his heart allegedly produced a groan and a torrent of blood. Again, the body was burned. Though Arnold had been dispatched, the deaths didn't stop over the following years. 17 more villagers died in near-identical fashion. The cause, they believed, was tainted meat. Arnold had reportedly fed on livestock before his first burial, and those animals, once slaughtered and eaten, had passed on his curse, fearing another outbreak. The villagers began staking and burning suspected corpses on their own. Austrian authorities, alarmed by these rogue rituals, sent a full military detachment to intervene. In early 1732, 3 regiments under Baron von Flückiger were dispatched to Medvega. Flückiger, a regimental surgeon, was skeptical of the vampire claims, but curious. What he encountered left him deeply unsettled. His team conducted thorough autopsies on all recently deceased villagers, men, women, children, even infants. 10 corpses, despite being buried for weeks, showed no decomposition. Warm blood, fresh skin, even post-mortem weight gain in some cases baffled the scientists. One woman, known to have starved during life, appeared robust and well-fed in death, with no scientific explanation. Flückiger reluctantly gave the villagers permission to carry out the final rites. Each of the 17 bodies was burned, their remains scattered, and just like that, the death stopped. Flückiger's full report, titled Visum et Repertum, was submitted to imperial headquarters in Belgrade. The response was swift and widespread. Despite church warnings against superstition, even Emperor Charles VI showed interest. Copies were sent across Europe, and debate raged in universities and royal courts. Could vampires be real? And if so, were they truly dead or something in between? By 1746, the Vatican issued a firm dismissal. A scholar named Dom Augustin Kelmick concluded that vampires were products of imagination, not resurrection, but not everyone was convinced. Centuries passed, and belief in vampires faded from Europe's mainstream consciousness, yet in rural Serbia, old fears still simmered beneath the surface. In 2012, the small village of Zarazj was thrown into panic when a 300-year-old water mill collapsed. Locals believed the mill had housed the vampire Sava Savinovi, a notorious figure in regional folklore. Out of fear, no one had dared repair the structure. Now, with the mill in ruins, residents feared the vampire had been released. Garlic sales soared. Crosses were nailed above doorways. Hawthorne stakes were once again sharpened, and for 7 months the town lived in fear of a very real, very ancient evil. To many, such stories are little more than relics of a superstitious age, but to others, especially those raised close to the land and its long memory, they are warnings that not all dangers are physical. That something ancient and hungry might still walk among us. 300 years ago, trained soldiers and medical experts armed with reason and rationality left the Balkans more confused than when they arrived. Their official reports remain, and while they may not prove the supernatural, they refuse to dismiss it. So next time you hear the word vampire, remember, from military documents to modern-day fear, it may not just be myth.